Good morning. Good morning. Am I on? Great. Auntie Lola, thank you so much for welcoming us. And on behalf of all of Bullhorn, our sponsors and our partners, welcome as well. We're really excited to have all of you with us. This is actually our largest Engage Sydney event to date. So we are incredibly thrilled to be able to spend this day together. We have a ton of really great content. You may look around and see a couple empty chairs. We, of course, do have both friends and colleagues that are in Brisbane that couldn't make the trip. So as we go through the day, please think about them in your thoughts, reach out to them. Let's make sure everyone is safe. We know Alfred looks like it's going to be a doozy, so hopefully everyone doesn't have anything major that happens as a result of it. But for this keynote, I want to take us through a couple of different things. One of the really exciting things that we've been working on at Bullhorn is all of our investments in AI. And those investments are going to take lots of different forms, and we're going to show you and take you through what those look like, but more importantly, how those are actually going to come to life for you throughout all your experiences, okay? And we're going to get into that. But I want to start off talking a little bit about the market. This is an area where I spend a lot of my time, and a lot of my peers spend their time looking at some of the trends and some of the changes that are happening globally within the industry that we all operate in. And one of the things that we've been seeing, as many of you know, if you've been in recruitment for a really long time, we are a cyclical industry. And I'll go forward one. There are always peaks and valleys. At times when vacancies are up, candidate availability is down. When candidate availability is up, jobs tend to be down. There's this symbiotic relationship and like this ebb and flow of the industry where we may not like it, but we understand kind of what to expect. There's always like this yin to our yang, if you will, right? There's this state of nature that just exists. But over the last like 12 to 18 months, something really interesting has been happening. We're talking to customers, obviously globally, and we're hearing a lot of feedback. And one of the things that we hear is both jobs and candidates are really low right now. This is a really hard time. We also hear a lot of question, what is going on? And so this is something that we really pay attention to. We have a lot of people at Bullhorn that not only look at the market that we operate in, but a market as a whole, right? Because we want to have a really good understanding of both headwinds and tailwinds as we look to forecast both our business and look at what are some of the challenges and concerns that our customers may experience. And so there's something really unique that I also want to share with you today. I don't know if other folks pay attention to this as closely as we do, but we look at jobs data quite closely. We look at jobs data, we look at unemployment data, we look at how much movement is happening in the industry. We're seeing this really interesting thing. So customers are obviously telling us job orders are down. We saw that in our last grid report where a lot of agencies identified that business development was the #1 priority for them, that they're trying to find new jobs. But all the job data that we see from a global basis says that there's this huge abundance of jobs. This is the jobs data in Australia. We're seeing exactly the same in North America, in UK and EMEA, which is really unique. So if you look at it, yes, the jobs are definitely down from COVID times, but historically they are fairly up. So where's the disconnect? Well, there's also a really interesting other part of this, which is where when we look at what candidate experience is, candidates are actually saying that on average it's taking about 4 to 6 months to find a job. That's a 20% increase from last year. So if there are so many jobs that exist, and candidates are having such a hard time finding them, and we're hearing from all of you that both candidate and job availability is down, there's something behind the scenes that just isn't making sense. Well, Bullhorn's not the only ones that are seeing this and paying attention to it. As a matter of fact, Harvard Business School actually conducted a study where they reached out to a whole bunch of hiring managers from lots of different corporations, and they asked them all about their hiring practices and what was going on. This was something that they found. So 40% of the hiring managers that they spoke to said that their company had put basically a fake job, at least one fake job, recently. And this was something that surprised us, right? And so I'm a little bit of a data geek and a data nerd, if you will, and so I decided to go down the rabbit hole. So I started looking into this, and it was actually surprising. Wall Street Journal actually just had a news article not that long ago. I think it was probably about a month and a half now. They spoke to a very popular company that supports corp HR, and they obviously publish a lot of jobs externally. And this is what it said. They actually found that 1 out of every 5 jobs that were getting published on their platform were fake, coming from corp HR. 20%. That's a fairly significant number. So there's reason and rationale for why this happened. And so when they actually, when they dug into it and they were trying to understand why was this behavior happening, there were a couple of things that actually came to light. One was a lot of companies are using this as an opportunity just to canvass the market. They know that they may have a job coming up, and so they want to put it out there and see what candidate availability and skills look like. Because at the time when that job becomes available, they want to have a pretty strong candidate pool, not unlike some of the behaviors that we do in our industry. But the more nefarious answer that was really surprising was they actually found that if they posted a bunch of ghost jobs, some fake jobs, their existing workforce actually thought that the company was stronger than it was. And so they actually saw an increase both in productivity and revenue as a result of it. Kind of surprising, right? So please don't go out and publish a whole bunch of fake jobs if you're looking to grow revenue. But it's an important thing for us to be aware of. Why do I say that? Well, we know from our grid survey, so if you're familiar, we publish 2 surveys every year. One is on the agency side and one is on the talent side. We ask talent and candidates where they spend their time, where they look for jobs, how they want to work with recruitment agencies. One of the things that we found, their number one place that they go before anywhere else, job boards. So you put these two things together. I'm sure many of you have heard the stories about candidates saying that the job market is incredibly painful. They are sending out dozens, if not hundreds of resumes to all these jobs, and they're hearing absolutely nothing. Well, there's a very good likelihood that over 20% of the jobs don't even exist. So why is that important for us? Well, because that's degrading their experience. That's degrading their perception of the labor market, and it's going to be harder both to find them and to entice them in order to make a move. And I'm going to show you some data that even supports that even further. One of the other really interesting characteristics that we've seen is I was talking to a customer a couple months ago, and they were telling me that historically, in their line of work, about 1 in every 5 candidates turns down a job offer. They're just flat out, they're getting all the way to the point of getting an offer, and they're declining it. Well, over the last couple months, that actually has increased to 2 in 5. So why is that happening? Why are candidates more reluctant to accept job offers? Well, we dug into this too, and we actually found a lot of synergies between some of the other stats that we're seeing across general recruitment. We know from our surveys of candidates and talent that every stage of the process and every stage of the experience is incredibly important to loyalty and satisfaction. Well, we saw the same answers show up in why candidates were turning down job offers. If they have a poor experience, either through the application process, through the interview process, they're not feeling like they're being communicated with, communications are not hyper-personalized, they don't feel like they really trust the recruiters that they're working with, they are more likely to decline a job offer. What does that mean for all of us in the room? Well, if this trend continues and more candidates continue to decline job offers, well, that means our funnel has to get really, really big. We're going to have to spend a tremendous amount of time finding more candidates and more talent. And in a market where we're already having trouble doing that, this is going to be more difficult. It's going to take more work. So we have to use this as an opportunity to rethink some of our approaches and the technologies that we're using in order to help this. Here's another crazy stat. So this just came out of our latest grid report, and I'll step to the side. So we serve. This is from our industry report where we surveyed agencies, about 2,500 globally, and this is what they identified. Recruiters are spending about 14.6 hours a week trying to find candidates, searching for candidates. That's not really what we want, right? We want them to be working closer to the money. We want them to be able to spend more time talking to people and less time actually using tools. We don't want them spending half their week actually just searching, right? So we need to kind of change the game. We need to flip it on its head. And there are lots of technologies and things that we're going to show you of how we're going to help there. I want to show one other point that I think further validates this. This is a chart that shows the number of employed people who changed jobs in Australia for the last year. This is the trend. It's continuing to go down. Anyone hear of this term before? I think you're going to hear it a lot over the next 12 to 18 months. It's called the Great Stay. What we're seeing is more and more candidates are, between the trepidation about the market, concerns about the economy, hearing some of the stories about how long it takes to find a new job, it's going to be harder and harder to entice them to actually make a move. And so I offer to you, if recruiters are spending 14.6 hours a week searching for candidates, and we've got this big challenge ahead of us, we need to change the model to allow them to spend more time talking and convincing candidates than actually searching for them. And that's really, when we talk about how Bullhorn is reimagining recruitment with AI infused everywhere, that's really the strategy. That's really what's the driving force behind everything that we're trying to do. We are looking at every part of the process and every aspect of the workflow to understand what are the right AI capabilities that we could bring to bear and offer to you and allow you to put them in so that it feels natural, so that you build trust, you build adoption, but you can fundamentally free people up to doing what they are best at, which is being human. Spending the time convincing with clients, negotiating with clients, talking with candidates, negotiating with them, convincing them to take roles. We want to help you help all of your people do that a lot more easier with a lot less administrative work. And that's really what we're going to talk about today, all right? So one of the other aspects of this that I am personally really excited about, I've been with Bullhorn for over 10 years, and I've been on a really long journey with the company. We started back in 2017, breaking into the Salesforce ecosystem. That's when we made our first acquisition. And over the course of the last couple of years, we've had two very separate paths. We had the Bullhorn platform and we had the Salesforce platform. And we supported customers however they wanted to leverage software and build their tech stacks. Well, those 2 points were very far apart. The capabilities that we had on one didn't necessarily translate to the other, and over the last couple of years, we've spent a tremendous amount of time and money both building and acquiring companies to help bring those together. Well, there's a new point of intersection happening, and these two parallel paths are finally converging, and that's all about the AI experience. It's how can we do what I was just talking about, help infuse AI throughout every part of the workflow, every part of the platform, so it really makes sense for all of your people that are using our software and really help them achieve what it is that we were going to set out to achieve. So how are we doing that? There's really 3 ways. I'll start in the middle. We look at the world kind of, there are essentially 3 fundamental building blocks in everything that we're going to do in AI. The first one is assistance. Some of you may have started down this journey with Copilot Starter. Others, you may be using Microsoft Copilot. You may be using Salesforce's capabilities. You may even have users using ChatGPT, right? This is all about generative AI. How can I use the power and strength of large language models to help my people do what they're doing, crafting emails, updating job descriptions, summarizing notes, whatever it may be. Generative AI has an incredible benefit in doing all of that stuff really, really quickly, and it does an incredible job as well, right? We always say if we can get you 80% of the way, that's a huge time saving. We know that it takes, on average, about 14 minutes for someone to write an email. What if we can do it in 2? Well, there's an opportunity to apply all that time to other things that are more important, that are closer to the money. And that's really what we're driving at. And so all of our AI assistants, and we have about 150 different capabilities or actions that are a part of this. That's all powered by what's called a large language model. There are commercially available ones that you can buy yourself. Salesforce provides one, and one of the big changes that's happening in 2025, Bullhorn can provide one as well. And so we're no longer requiring you to bring your own to the table. If that's a point of friction and you just don't want that additional contract, if you will, you can use ours. This is not a Bullhorn trained large language model. We're using just a commercial one off the shelf. And that's a really important piece, because what we've heard from customers, especially when this Gen AI thing really hit the industry, there was a lot of concern around security and privacy. And was the large language model learning and storing and adapting from my data, and would my data then be available to other customers? And I just want to make this point really, really clear. We have built all the right trust layers in place to ensure that that absolutely doesn't happen. And our large language model is essentially static. It only responds to what you ask. It never learns from any of your data. On the flip side, on the user-driven one, these are matching models. These are models that we've built ourselves. We've also acquired through some very strategic M&A over the last year. This came in the form of SourceBreaker. Our most recent acquisition was TextKernel, obviously. And these matching models do an incredible job of matching candidates to jobs, right? Our goal is to alleviate that stress point before of 14.6 hours being spent searching and matching. So how are we going to change the game? Well, one of the things that these companies never had the ability to understand was, what was the outcome? Not just what is the candidate profile and the job description and how well do those two things intersect, but what was the ultimate outcome of all these previous jobs and all these previous processes that actually drove that placement to happen? What were the characteristics and the attributes and all the different other bits of information that are really important that a human naturally takes into account when making a decision as to these candidates are a good fit versus others? Well, these companies didn't have that ability to understand that. And so now that we've acquired these companies and we've brought these models in, we're building really highly accurate models that will take the form of agents, and they will also take the form in search and match, which is incredibly exciting. The accuracy level is just off the charts in some of the stuff we do. And then the third area is agents, right? Agents are really autonomous things that really combine either assistance or models or automation. They put them all together, and they are completing multiple parts of a series of tasks. And so we have a whole fleet of agents, which we're going to showcase for you today. We're going to go into more detail in some of the AI sessions throughout the agenda as well. But there's a lot of really incredible things that we're doing here. To add to that, one of the other areas that I also want to just bring to your attention is we recently announced a capability called Data Hub. And I'm not sure if everyone heard about this. This is very specific to the Bullhorn platform, because for all of our Salesforce customers, Salesforce built Data Cloud, which is incredibly powerful and a great way to bring all your data together. This was a piece of feedback that we got from a lot of customers, especially in the area of analytics. It's great to have desk-level insights, but I want fuller picture opportunities. I want to build KPIs and understand every aspect of my business. In order to do that, I have to bring third-party data in. Historically, that has always required a separate data warehouse and a BI tool, like Power BI or Tableau or others, right? With Data Hub, you can actually bring all of your data in one single place. So whether it's coming from some parts of the Bullhorn portfolio, we have Data Hub partners that have signed up that are putting their data directly into Data Hub. We are also offering the ability for third-party connections, whether it's financial data or back office data, whatever it may be. You can now bring all of that into the Bullhorn platform, not only to leverage for analytics, but as you look to extend things like automation and some decision-making, you have all of that at your fingertips. Okay, so with that, I think it's time to get into showcasing some of the stuff that we have. All right? We're incredibly excited about this vision. A lot of the stuff that you're going to see is either a mix of things that we already have released or we're about to release in very short order. And so in order to do that, I'm going to ask one of my coworkers to join me. So please join me in welcoming Nathan Green to the stage to help showcase some of this stuff.
Well, thank you, Jeff. It's fantastic to be back here with everyone again for another year. What I'd love to start with is a bit of a show of hands. Could you put your hand up, raise it, if you think that AI will replace recruiters? Put it in the air. There's one. I'm not seeing many hands, Jeff. And I think the reality is that AI, we know very well, is not going to replace recruiters, but rather we're focusing on how it can replace their tasks. Now, with that, I'm sure that everyone in the audience, to a degree, has used some sort of AI tool, and you probably haven't seen a reduction in value of the role that you serve in that business. And in the same way, recruitment consultants are already starting to use some of these tools like ChatGPT or Claude, for example, figure out how they can make themselves more efficient, more effective at their job, and what ways that it can be used to make things faster. In a similar way, Bullhorn's starting to think about how we can bring these into recruitment. So like Jeff was talking about, we've had a strong focus on what are the tasks that we can replace for recruiters that are really going to add value, whether it be time saving, whether it be an improved output that they're giving. And I think to look at an example, Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, put it really well when he said, it's not necessarily about the percentage of jobs that AI will replace, but rather the percentage of tasks. So if you think about things like the 5-minute task, the 5-second task, the 5-hour tasks, those are the kinds of things that we're targeting AI at. And we're thinking about what is it in the recruitment workflow that we can replace in that way. Now, with that mindset of what tasks can we take out, I want to jump into a bit of a platform demonstration. I want to walk you guys through some of the things that Jeff was talking about at a fairly high level there. And where I want to start is picking up at the data hub, the data cloud, bringing all that information from the various platforms that you use into the one place. Because the reality is, for many of us, your ATS is no longer just your front office. It's your middle office. It's the engagement that you're tracking through NPS surveys. It's the periphery marketplace partners that you're plugging into it. All that data now sits in one place inside the system. For this walkthrough, what I want to do is I want to jump into the perspective of a business, Acme Recruitment. And we obviously have a data-driven business here. We've got great dashboards, great analytics. But me, I'm a recruiter, jumping in, logging into the system. I'm seeing it for the first time today, and I'm wondering, what do I do next? So I open up the AI assistant, and I ask it a really simple question. Where should I be focusing right now to win new business? Now, the AI is able to take that prompt, look at the data that's on the screen, but not just what's on the screen, also the information that sits behind it. And it's able to pull out insights for us that drive us toward a revenue-raising activity like the correct BD action. Now, in this case, the AI has suggested you have a surplus of candidates that are active, that are project managers right now. You have a very large supply inside the database. So where you should focus is looking for project manager roles that are posted online for businesses that you can work with. Now, that's a great insight, but it also gives me a call to action. It suggests that we use market intelligence to look at this.
So this is an example of market intelligence. This was one of the assets that we acquired from TextKernel. If you're familiar with it, you may have heard of it as Labor Market Insights or Job Feed. Essentially what this is doing is this is consuming and analyzing millions and millions of jobs globally. We're putting it into a huge data warehouse, and we're using AI to synthesize all the critical information that exists within the jobs. So not only can you see things like key trends that exist within certain markets, certain geographies, certain job types by example, but you can also see a lot of all of the related information underneath it, right? So you think of one of the things that made text kernels so successful was they have an incredibly deep understanding of ontologies and relationships between things like skills and jobs and job titles. And so not only can you look at those high-level stats, but you can also understand what are the skills in need, what are the top proficiencies, what are the different areas that are gaining momentum. You can even use this for competitive intelligence to understand who are some of your competitors that have strong positions within these markets. So whether you're trying to break into a new market or understand an existing market, what we've now rebranded as Market IQ can help you with all of that.
And I think it's important as well to consider, Jeff was alluding to it there, but there's a very large data set that sits behind this. So when he was talking about using this tool to identify maybe an industry, a sector, a geography that you're in or looking to break into, the data is there for it. We have over 380 million historical jobs. So you can look at point in time to identify how was a market performing? Are there any indicators to us that a market will return to that? Or is there an existing market we're in that we should focus on in a different way? And that 380 million is made up of over 4.6 million clients. What that means is that we're not taking these jobs from just job boards, it's from company websites direct. So if a company posts a job, that appears inside of our system. And that makes up 20 million live jobs. So whether that's a sector that you're in, whether it's one you're looking to expand into, it would be difficult to not find value in that information. Now, with that in mind, I'm going to jump back into that recruiter's seat. And in this case, I've run a quick search using the tool that Jeff was looking at, and I can see that it spit out some results for project managers. Great, we have plenty of candidates. I can see something quite interesting here, though. I can see that it's flagging with me that there is a project manager role listed online right now with an existing client. What it's essentially saying to me is, did you know that one of your clients is hiring right now and you're not working with them? So it's great at identifying information that's in the database, using that in the context of the search, and then pointing us in a particular direction. Because in this case, it's the path of least resistance. We're already working together. We already have terms agreed. Why wouldn't I work on trying to work with them for this particular role? Now, in this case, I like it. I'm going to take it back into Bullhorn. And the system's able to take all that public job information, pull it back into the system so that I'm not sitting there manually keying in information. And in this case, it links it to an existing client that we've got. And now this is where I want to bring up our first AI agent. So we're calling it the AI selling agent. This agent is able to help us as soon as we get something at the top of that BD funnel. In this case, because we've brought the job in from online and we have some key details like the job description and other information the clients chose to post online, we can use that to automatically, immediately match a set of candidates that we might choose to reverse market across to the client. In this case, it's found the top 4 candidates there, highlighted them in green, and these are some great candidates that I'm going to use to reverse market across to the client. So in this case, this is a great start. I've got the job. I found some great candidates that I might want to reverse market out across to them, but what do I do next? The selling agent is then able to dig through your database, look at all the historical activities, and suggest who would be the best person to reach out to from there. So in this case, if we haven't worked with Nexus Dynamics for quite a while, it will highlight to us who likely the hiring manager is going to be, using all of that historical data. From here, once I've identified that Robert is probably going to be the best person that we speak to, I can take the natural next step, which might be creating an anonymized version of that candidate's CV. So using AI to take the details from the candidate on our database, strip out the information that might be identifiable for them, and then allow us to send those candidates on to the client. The last step is probably going to be to craft up an email. Now, Jeff was talking about it before. This may be a 5-minute task. It might be a 15-minute task, depending on how you guys do this today. But what it is it's an excellent starting point for us. It takes the details of the candidate, takes the details of the job, and crafts up a bespoke email as a starting point. I think that probably quite a few among you have started to use AI, and you might notice that there are mixed results in terms of the communications that you'll get out off the back of it. This doesn't have to be what you send, but it saves you a massive amount of time in starting to craft up that message that you send on to the client. Then as a business, you can focus on differentiating, adding whatever your secret sauce is to that. Now, I want to focus on what happens after we send those candidates across to Robert. In this case, he sees those candidates, he thinks they're great, so he gets on the phone and gives us a call. We're speaking with Robert, it automatically opens up his record, and we have a bit of a conversation here. But I want to pause just for a second to highlight that we have some incredible telephony partners that allow this sort of integration. So when people like Robert call, it automatically opens up their profile and flags for us who they are inside the system. And why this is significant is because those same integrations can take the transcript of the conversation that we're having and save it back into the system. Many among you might be thinking, pretty standard. That's sort of table stakes at this point, saving the conversations that you're having. But why I'm talking about it specifically is that Robert and I, we may talk about the salary of the job. We might talk about the start date, maybe even the skills that might be required for that job while we're on the phone. A lot of details that I'm going to have to take and update on the job. Well, after I hang up with Robert, that note is automatically saved into the system. And this is where it brings us to our second AI agent, the enrichment agent, which is focused on taking the unstructured data and turning it into structured data inside the system. So consider what we just discussed, the salary, the start date, the skills. It takes that information and automatically suggests updates for us inside the database. Again, saving a 5-second task, a 5-minute task of taking that unstructured data, popping it into a form inside the database. Then, as a consultant, all I need to do is hit the accept button. Now, naturally, over time, as your businesses become more and more comfortable with using AI inside your workflows and having it do things in the background, that manual process of accepting the changes will go away. This is going to be something that happens in the background once you have that confidence instilled. Because no one wants, after each call, to have to navigate back to the record, open up the note, and press accept. You want that to happen automatically because, again, it's another 5-second, 5-minute time saving as well. At this point, we're on the job. We have quite a few details inside of here. It's almost ready to start working, but there's a couple of administrative tasks that we need to do. So if you think about some of those 5-minute tasks, now that I've got the salary, the start date, maybe a public job description that the client provided, I need to change some of that information. I'm going to have to adjust the public job description to remove details about the client. I might have to create some screening questions, and there's probably a few other tasks that sit inside there as well. Well, in this case, again, we're going to try and automate that. So rather than me doing it, the system in the background, using automation, is able to speak directly to the AI assistant. Meaning, as soon as that job has enough information for us, it goes in and improves the public job description. It's able to automatically interface with AI and create screening questions. And after that, since we're here, we may as well mark this job as public so that it automatically appears on the website. Now, in your business, there might be different steps that you'll take, some different 5-minute tasks that you want to pull out of there, and you can have these automated, whether they're just a straight automated task or something that you would interface with AI to get a response and then have that happen automatically in the background. So all this occurs, jobs on the website, and it's time for me to start sourcing. But I've done nothing up until this point. It's taken me almost no time. This is where our third AI agent comes in, the matching agent. Now, what the matching agent is able to do, similar to that first step with the selling agent, is automatically perform a recommended candidate match. Now, it's similar to the last, except in this case, it's using that sea of data model that Jeff was talking about earlier on. So if you call back to it, the way that we're matching this data is based on an AI model that we've fed hundreds of millions of successful candidates into placements on. So it's a success-based model. We have all the information that tells us what would make a candidate good for a particular job. We use that to match candidates from your database to your job so that it can save you a massive amount of time. Now, this might be a great starting point for me. I can see some good candidates here. Maybe the best candidates return here, and I can place them. But in this case, I want to take the search a little bit further. So I hit the big blue button in the top right-hand corner, and it takes me through to the candidate list. Now, what you might notice immediately, there's quite a few Bullhorn customers in here, is that that is a completely different looking candidate list. And the reality is that we've rebuilt our search from the ground up, totally overhauling everything that was inside of there. And if you want to learn more about that, there is a platform session later on where we'll go into a lot of detail about what's changed with the search itself. But at its core, we've taken the acquisitions of SourceBreaker and TextKernel, so the usability, the user experience from SourceBreaker, and then the powerful ontology library for keyword matching from TextKernel, and built that into the core system. Now, in this case, I go through all these candidates, I shortlist some back across to my job, but I've exhausted the list, so I need to go external now. And in a lot of cases, external searching means I need to jump across to a job board, external to the system. I need to know how to use it. It's going to take some time, and I've also got to send those candidates back into the database as well. Well, with Bullhorn, we're also now able to switch up the top and perform an external search, finding candidates who are posted online from within the same search using the same criteria that you've executed your database search. This pretty much enables me to be able to run a best practice search. I look at the database first, and once I've exhausted that, I switch and look at the external job boards straight afterwards. From a usability perspective, it also means that I don't have to know how to navigate 5 different job boards and figure out how to use each of those as well. Now, let's say that I find a few candidates here. I select them, I add them back as a shortlist across to my job, but before I finish, the search that was built here gave some really good results, so I'm going to save that search. The way that the matching agent takes that one step further is that with that saved search, I'm now able to follow it, meaning that anytime a candidate that matches that search comes into our database or any of those external sources, it sends me a notification to let me know. So again, saving a little bit more time with even having to execute the search to begin with. So we've found quite a few candidates, we've built up a bit of a short list, and now it's time to start to work through this list. With this list, realistically, I'm going to prioritize my best candidates here, the ones that have the best looking profile. I'm going to pick up the phone, I'm going to talk to each of them, but it's near the end of the day. So I'm not going to reach out to everyone. With the remaining candidates who I don't reach out to with a phone call, I'm going to get an outreach out to them, and that's probably going to be through an email. Now, in this case, as I construct up that email across to those candidates, again, the AI assistant comes in, but in a bit of a different flavor. As I'm constructing this email, it gives me a template automatically that builds up that template across to the candidates, and what I can do is highlight sections of the text. One of the pieces of feedback that we got about the AI assistant is that every time you use it, you need to get a whole new output from it. You can't change small pieces that sit inside of there. So to alleviate that, we now enable you to be able to highlight text, request that a portion of that text be changed, and then only change that piece. So in this case, we construct an email, we get it together really quick, we proof check it, it looks great, and I'm going to shoot it out across to the email, to the candidate. But before I do, many of you will probably know that this whole process here, you can automate a very large portion of it. So right now, you can auto-match candidates, they can be shortlisted to the job, you can communicate some details across to them. What changes with that is that underlying model that performs the matching. So the massive improvement in quality of the actual candidates that are getting matched across to these jobs if you do choose to automate that process as well. Right, so we send this email out. Jane, our candidate, receives that email, and it gives her some great detail about the job. I can see some high-level information, and I also have a call to action as Jane to go and view that website. So I click across to view the job posting on the website. Again, it's got a bit more detail. I'm really interested. I've got high intent for this job, so how can we capitalize on that to save the recruiter some time? Well, because we know who Jane is, we know how she got across to the website, we can automatically serve her up a chat that says, hey, how you going? Now think about, again, what are the tasks that are involved at the top of that application funnel that are taking up some time? Well, with someone like Jane, we might want to ask some closed-ended questions like, are you eligible to work in Australia, for example? And as Jane, I get each of these questions correct. For those who don't, they might be automatically removed from that application process, again, shaving off some time. But at the end of this chat, I'm invited, would you like to begin a virtual screen?
Now, can we turn? Thank you. Just out of curiosity, how many people in the audience have used virtual screening agents so far? How many people have piloted or tested? Some. This is an area of AI and technology that has advanced at lightning speed over the last year. When we started this journey, we actually started it in a text format. And so we actually built like a chatbot and essentially could text back and forth with candidates. And some of our very early access customers gave us feedback that the candidates didn't really like the experience. And so we started to move into more of a voice experience. And even that, there were some questions, and we got some feedback about like the modality of it. Do they want to actually get a phone call? So our first iteration of the voice agent, for example, you would put in your telephone number, you'd hit ready, it would give you a call, and then you just talk to it over the phone. And the feedback that we got was that actually wasn't the experience they were looking for either. And so this is where we've landed. This has come over a number of iterations, what candidates really want the opportunity to do when they're doing a virtual screen. And why would you have a virtual screen? Well, there are candidates that may want to go through the process. Maybe they need to go through a pre-interview stage. a lot of them are submitting or applying at nights and on the weekends, right, where a recruiter may not be available. So if they can speed up that process and get through the funnel faster, this is a great way. And the experience is actually fantastic. And so what they wanted and what they asked from us is they want an experience where they can actually see the job description on the left-hand side and then see kind of the transcript of the conversation happening in real time on the right. And so that they can, they felt like they were talking to someone, and as I'm sure you can imagine, if you were having an interview, you would probably have the job description, your resume up on the screen. You want to be able to see those assets, and so that was the feedback that we got here.
Yeah, and there's a lot of value in a tool like this. It's an important tool from the perspective of, let's say, a consultant. We're spending a lot of time at the top of that funnel, especially where the volume is quite high.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, given that very few hands raised, do you all want to see what this looks like? You want to see it live? Well, not live, but an actual recording? All right, let's show them.
Hello, this is Alice, an AI agent for Acme Recruiters Australia. I am going to interview you for the project manager position. Are you ready to begin the interview?
Sure, let's go.
Great. Let's get started with the first question. Describe your experience managing the full project lifecycle from inception to completion, specifically within the technology, software, or automation sectors. How did you ensure projects were delivered on time, within scope, and met quality standards?
Sure thing. So I've had about 20 years experience leading end-to-end projects across technology, software, and automation industries, managing everything from initial planning and requirement gathering all the way through to delivery and post-implementation review. I ensure projects are delivered on time by setting clear milestones, tracking dependencies, and proactively addressing risks. Stakeholder alignment in these kinds of projects is key. I manage scope changes through formal processes while maintaining the highest level of transparency.
Thank you for sharing your experience. It sounds like you have a solid background in managing projects effectively. Let's move on to the next question. Which project management methodologies are you most familiar with, such as Agile, Scrum, or Waterfall? Can you provide an example of a project where you applied one of these methodologies and the outcome?
I feel like Nathan used ChatGPT to provide that third answer. Am I right?
Yeah, I'm very familiar with Agile waterfalls, Jeff, like you are as well, of course. Yeah, so I will pause it there. I have no idea what that next question means, but what's really powerful about this is that it's able to take the inputs that you give, parse the sentiment behind what you're saying, and then adjust the answers off the back of it. If I was to give it a response asking it a question, it'll answer the question within the context of what information you've given that agent. So you have a unique level of control over everything that it says and also is able to say. Now, with Jane, she took that screen, and after she took the screen, she received an email update off the back of it. What's really important in these processes is that there is an extreme level of transparency, so that if the candidate is successful or they are unsuccessful, they know about it. And in this case, Jane receives an email that invites her to book some time into the recruiter's calendar. Now, this is important because then Jane, if she's on the weekend taking that screen, she has a successful screen, the screening agent says that she's great, we should lock in the next step with her so that as the consultant comes in on the Monday morning, they can then pick that up, they've saved a massive amount of time, there's no lag in between that process. Now, if I jump across to the actual questions that are generated here, every job is going to have questions that are automatically generated against it. So as soon as you have details sitting inside the job record, the system will generate these screening questions based on the instructions that you've given it. Now, as a consultant, I'm not powerless in this process. If I want to add questions, let's say I want to remove questions or adjust the questions that are there, I can do that. But what's important is that we keep going back to how do we save time where we can. So the AI is going through, creating these questions, and I'm not having to spend my time on the administrative tasks that sit behind it. Now let's jump back into the recruiter's perspective. So Jane received that successful email alert, and as she completed the screen, I received an email saying, hey, Jane's completed a virtual screening agent and she's booked an interview with you. Great. So I open up her record and see what's inside the system. And in this case, it gives me an overarching score, 0 to 100, which says, how relevant is Jane for this job, based on the way that she answered the questions and the content that are inside the questions themselves. I also get a lot of other information as well. I get a summary. I get the highlights about Jane, and I also get focus areas, the things that I should focus on that I take the next stage with Jane. So if I call Jane on the phone and speak to her and do that initial interview, I can use the information provided by the AI assistant here and take the information, let's say, about the focus areas that it's suggesting. So if it's saying that I should focus on a particular point because maybe her strength isn't there, great opportunity for me to start to ask those questions, but I'm not asking the baseline and spending a lot of time doing that. Now, in this case, Jane is an impressive candidate. I want to take her and send her across to the client. So I jump across to her submission. And this is where we introduce the final screening agent for today, which is the submitting agent. Now, similar to the selling agent earlier on, it speeds up that process of taking someone like Jane, adjusting all the things that we need, and then shooting that across to the client. So the first thing we're probably going to want to do is, since we have a bit more unstructured and structured information about Jane, we're going to want to take that and craft up a really bespoke email pitch. Once we've created that pitch, we're again going to want to go through and refine the CV that we're going to send out across to that client. In this case, because Jane was someone who had a slightly weaker profile, we didn't preference her for that first call, she might have been missed to begin with here. But in this case, since we've given her that opportunity to go through the screening agent, answer these questions, and we've scored her quite highly, she doesn't miss out on that opportunity, and we don't miss out on the candidate as well. Once we're done with crafting up that formatted CV, we can shoot it across to the client, and the next step gets placed. So we log all the KPIs automatically, and everything's done. Now, with this, there's been a lot of AI assistants jumping in throughout that funnel. From the job coming in all the way through to the candidate being sent out, our focus has been on what are the ways that we can take time out of your day and supplement that with AI without degrading the experience from both a candidate and a client perspective. How can we add value but make things quicker? So the AI agents have been focused on that. And since it's been so quick, we send it across to the client, he's happy, and we make a placement. A big deal flash goes up around the offices, and everyone celebrates. My song plays. Excellent. Now, in this case, AI has assisted us the whole way throughout and can continue to assist us post that placement. But I want to talk about the AI assistant for just a brief second. Many of you in the crowd will already be familiar with some form of AI assistant that we shared across. We had quite a few customers testing this out. We gave you the ability to interact with a large language model that takes the data from your database, sends it across to a large language model, and spits out a response off the back of it. Many, many of you were testing that out. And with that, you might even remember it from its first name, which was Copilot. Well, we've rebranded Copilot. It's now called the AI Assistant, and that's just the start. The intention from here is that we take the AI Assistant and bring it everywhere. The reason that we're doing this is based on the feedback from everyone that we spoke to. So many of you were saying the candidate record is a great start, but what about the job, for example? So we've expanded it out to there, and it's our view to bring this everywhere inside the system. There was also a really large number of requests to be able to build your own AI prompts. So we built that. You can now go in and build your own prompts that interact directly with a large language model, but still provide a nice controlled experience for the consultant so that they don't have to figure out what to write when they're interfacing with that large language model. We even gave you a playground to test it out. So before you put it out in the field and allow your recruiters to start using it, you can test it with real data from your database, see what sort of responses that you get off the back of it, and then adjust the way that that prompt is interacting with the large language model. It's this same vision that we're taking everywhere. So whether it be at the start of that journey where we focused on, you're looking at your database, your analytics, all that information from everywhere, you need a bit of an idea of where to focus. AI Assistant can help. It jumps in. If you're thinking about other things like, let's say, enrichment of the records, taking that unstructured data and turning it into structured data, taking the information from notes and putting it back into the system as fields. Even things like, let's say Robert calls me, I'm speaking to him, and he asks, how far is Jane willing to travel for this job? We spoke about it in a note way earlier on. I can ask the AI, how far is Jane willing to travel? And it spits out an answer quickly. Again, saving these small amounts of time. And think about automation coming into this as well. If we're missing something like a job title from a candidate, have the AI assistant trawl back through their CV, their work history, all that other unstructured information inside the notes, and update their job description automatically. And that is AI everywhere. We're bringing it all throughout the system.
And it's not just AI everywhere, it's AI everywhere across all of our platforms. So as I said before, our AI strategy is completely universal. Those parallel paths are converging, and everything that we're building, we're making available to customers either using the Bullhorn platform or through Recruitment Cloud. And we have sessions all throughout today that will show you all the different examples of how these things come to fruition, what they look like, what the experience is, whether you're screening, whether you're matching, whether you're using AI assistants, whether you're on Bullhorn platform or Recruitment Cloud, you can see all of that come to life. And the reason why all this is important is because, as I mentioned before, our goal and strategy, our North Star, is to figure out how do we help you inject the right AI capabilities at the right stages of the workflow, right? So we've offered kind of a very simplistic process today where we started from business development, we went all the way through placement. And we've shown you examples of how we're leveraging both assistants and agents in concert together in order to streamline that process and alleviate some of the admin work and the stress work that takes away from people's time of being human, having those conversations. Well, we understand that not every process and not every customer is going to be the same. You're going to look at this and say, you know what? I'm really not comfortable with a human only being inserted in at the very end. I actually want them to have a conversation after the matching process, or maybe after they go through a screen. Or you know what? I want to actually apply this to my VMS business, and I only want a recruiter to get involved at the very end. You have that choice. You have that capability. And the way that we do that is through automation. Automation is the key that's going to unlock AI for you. We always say you can have automation without AI, but you can't have AI without automation. These two things work in concert. There is a very strong relationship between the two of these because the realities are you're going to have lots of different iterations of this. So if we think of like a simple process, this may exist within your company today, but as you look at the next parts of your business, your processes get very complex. They get more challenging. You're going to have variations, whether it's for a particular client, a job type, a service delivery model, maybe it's a brand, an opco, whatever it may be. There are going to be lots and lots of implications or choices to be made of how these processes look. And the thing that we're focusing on is giving you what are all those right tools and piece parts of AI for you to inject in the right place at the right time. This is like true flexibility. We're not saying one size fits all. We know that all of you are going to have different levels of comfort, different levels of acceptability. Some will be more comfortable having a fully automated process. Some won't. And we understand that, and that's really our job and our role as your partner is to give you that choice, give you that power, and put all this together. Because what's going to end up happening is this is going to look really crazy, and over time, this is going to get more complex. But what all this is going to do is this is going to fundamentally change the way that your staff and your recruiters, your consultants, whomever they may be, think about AI, leverage AI, and infuse it throughout their workflow. And so that's really why we say our strategy is really to reimagine recruitment with AI infused everywhere. And that's what we're going to spend the rest of the day talking about in lots of different sessions. So with that, we want to thank you. We hope you have a great day. We've got a lot of great content, and we really hope you enjoy it. Thank you.